Welcome, Dave. Thank you for joining us in this video for our Everyday People, Everyday Leader videos. It's part of a series to develop skills based on the Everyday People, Everyday Leader book. So thank you for joining me today.
It's great to be here, Colin.
Yeah, good.
Great to be here.
So this video with you today is looking at the chapter we did on communicating powerfully. And Dave, I'm delighted to have you here with me today. We've known each other for the last 12 years. Doesn't time fly when we're having fun?
Absolutely. It's unusual to be sat round and have water rather than red wine on the table between us.
Yeah, so now one of our secrets is out. But a nice glass of red. And I know we've been over the last 12 years through the kind of highs and lows of life, actually, life and leadership and stuff. But tell us a little bit more, particularly for those who are watching this video. What is it that's your day job? What is it you do?
Yeah, so I run a business called Mosaic Spa and Health Clubs. We operate 25 health clubs or day spas, primarily as a contract management business, which means we don't own the facilities. We just operate them on behalf of primarily hotels.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're standalone. And we do everything in terms of the day-to-day running, operation, health and safety, marketing. All of those aspects really is what we look after, allowing the hotel, as I said, predominantly to focus on the core part of their business, which is letting rooms and selling food and beverage and conference space. And we just operate the spa and the health club for them. It's a big part of what they offer their guests, but it can be a distraction from the core part of their business. So we just bring a focus to that, allowing them to focus on their core part of the business, and we do what we do. So it means we employ around 450 staff, and we're located all across the country really. So and then we've got two big standalone health clubs and day spas that we own in the west of the country, one in Shropshire and one in Herefordshire.
Yeah. So I start the chapter in the book around powerful communication, around this whole concept of communication dissonance, and this sense that actually if the way we behave and what we do doesn't match what we're talking about, it's in conflict, in dissonance, and people find that then really hard when they're trying to do what we're saying, but it doesn't match kind of what we're doing. So how important do you think that is as a leader of an organisation to be attuned, for that authenticity?
Yeah, I think that's the key word, isn't it? I think you've got to be authentic. If you want to have any credibility, you've got to be authentic about what you do. I think that's absolutely essential. And if you try to instill certain behaviours in your team that work with you, but don't actually display those yourself, then you're really going to struggle because you will lack credibility, you will lack respect, and ultimately it will work in the short term, but in the long term, I think people need to understand that you say what you mean and mean what you say. Yeah. And therefore it's so important that you act out and follow through on what you are the key and core behaviours that you want your teams to do. So for example, in our business, we talk about one of the core values is that we want to be friendly health clubs. We can't control necessarily the quality of the facilities, because we rely on our clients, the people that own those facilities, to invest in them. So we're not always going to have the sexiest health clubs or day spas in the country, but we can have the friendliest. Yeah. And that's what we've set our stall out to be. So if I then behave in a way that doesn't embrace, nurture and appear friendly to my teams, how on earth can I expect them to kind of deliver that to our guests that come in? So I think this, I think absolute number one criteria of a leader is behave in the way you want your teams to behave. Yeah, brilliant.
And I had the privilege of going round with you once and just kind of following you. It makes me sound like it's a lapdog following you everywhere, but we went to the club.
You weren't on a lead.
Yeah, I wasn't on a lead. And I kind of, I saw that firsthand. I saw the fact that, you care about your clubs, you want them to care about your clubs. So I saw you pick up a bit of litter that had been dropped by somebody and you put that in the bin. You modelled that. I saw you go up to one of your members who'd been, they were a sports person, a tennis star. They'd been injured for a while and they'd been rehabilitating using the gyms there. And I saw you go up and you knew her firsthand. You knew her story. You just interacted, saw that being modelled. And if I see that, then other people are seeing that, other guests are seeing that, and as you say, your staff are seeing that. So that authentic behaviour then resonates with what you're talking about, isn't it? And exactly, you say friendly health club, then I need to be friendly, so that they model it.
Yeah, I mean, the visit you're talking about is one that we had to our club in Shrewsbury, which is one of our bigger clubs, as I said, over in Shropshire. And to be honest with you, I've loved. We only bought that club about 8 or 9 years ago, and we've been in business for 33 years. But I've loved being involved with that club because it's such a big club, and compared to what else we do, it's got 5,000 members compared to our other clubs have on average 500, and so therefore it's so much bigger than what we would normally be used to running, and therefore it's enabled me to build up over the sort of the 9 years that we've been there that kind of face to face with our members, with our customers, whereas a lot of our other clubs, because they're so small and because we've got a number of them, I would tend to just be dealing with the staff teams, whereas you're right, I know a few of the members there and I can feel a bit more involved in the day-to-day operation of the staff, but we say I get in the way. But I think it's important. I think picked on a couple of points. I mean, absolutely. So cleanliness in health clubs is critical, and it's the case. So I remember when we first got involved with the club, and I would walk through the bar area, and I'd pick up the plates that had been finished with and the cups, etc. And I'd carry them through to the kitchen, and everyone would be, "Oh, you don't need to do that." And I was like, well, I do actually, because actually they're there and they need picking up, and I'd kind of want you to do it. So why shouldn't I do it? Just because I've got a different job role or job title, it doesn't mean that I shouldn't do that. And hopefully over time that does then evolve in the behaviours and the way that people respond, because they think, well, actually, whenever he walks through the bar, he always picks up the plate. So kind of why shouldn't I? So I think that there is an element of leading by example, and I think. Yeah, I mean it's nice to get that feedback, but it's been a great, for me, that particular club actually has been fun, because it's been a chance for me to get back at what I started. I mean, my career started with just 3 of us, and we set this business up, and so I was on the gym floor and I was talking to the members, and that's probably the bit I love. And so Shrewsbury over the last 8 or 9 years has given me a chance to have a bit more direct contact with the members themselves, which I've enjoyed.
So in one sense, what you're talking about there, that route to authenticity is also about going back and remembering why we do what we do.
Yeah.
And so you're saying, getting perhaps on the shop floor regularly just reminds you about, this is the purpose, this is why I do it, which then again helps with that authentic message that you're talking about.
Yeah, and I think when we were growing the business, I mean, we started out, as I say, with 3 of us and 1 site, and we did that for, we grew the site a little bit, so we had a few more staff, but we didn't get our second site until we were 5 years in business. And then we went quite quickly from 2 sites to 5 sites in the space of 3 or 4 months, from being, having 1 site to 5. And I think what you have to do is adapt the way that you lead to that situation. It took us a while to get used to the fact that we were then a multi-site operational business, and we went for another 4 years probably without getting another site, and then in 4 years' time we went quite quickly to 9 sites. And I just remember thinking, we had to change our approach in terms of the way that we managed the teams and the way we worked with the customers, because you couldn't have as much direct influence on the gym floor, on the shop floor, on the gym floor as it was in our case, and so it requires a change. But in my behaviour as a leader, but at the heart of it, I set it up with a business partner. So there's 2 of us that basically run Mosaic, and kind of still do now, really. And so for myself and Steve, it was a completely different approach that we had to take when we had 9 sites when we had 1 site, but you've got to make sure that we're still being consistent with those messages. And I think we gained credibility from the fact that we could talk about the fact that the downsides of working in an industry like ours is that at 10:30 at night when the club's shut, you're going to be there cleaning out the showers, and that's not the nicest of jobs to be doing at 10:30 on a Friday night. But we'd actually been there and we'd done that, and we could relate to it, and we knew the challenges, and so we had credibility from the fact that we'd grown with the business, and we'd deliver those things. I think it's been really important, been going for 33 years now, to never forget those that actually it's a little attention to detail, it's picking up the plates, it's picking up the bit of fluff that's fallen on the floor and
Yeah.
those sorts of things. And if you do that, then yeah, I think it's back to your point, isn't it? It builds authenticity.
Yeah. And I guess as you've talked there about running multi-site rather than single site, and a number of people watching this video might be in that same situation where they're not just in one building, where you can have the photocopier conversations and the at the fridge and when you're making a cup of tea kind of conversations. So I guess it's about modeling that to the influencers. So you'll have leaders beneath you, and it's about you constantly modeling that to your influencers on the different sites, that therefore they then become the influencers on their site as well.
Yeah, and I think it's about adding in structure without taking away the culture. So as we grew, I always used to laugh and say, look, the whole way we dealt with stuff is if any staffing issues, etc., we'd sit down over a pie and a pint. And then it got to the point where I was going to be eating an awful lot of pies and drinking an awful lot of pints, or we had to change something. And so we introduced a little bit more structure and a bit more of a formality to what we did because we had to. And you're right, you've got some additional layers, so we put in club managers, etc. But what we tried to do with that was still not take away the friendliness and the sort of the feel and the culture that we had to the way that we did things, which was very, very informal and very relaxed. So a little bit of structure, but still keeping it informal and relaxed.
Yeah, I love that. You built in the structure, but still keep the culture.
Yeah.
Absolutely key. So that's authenticity. The next stage that we talk about in the chapter is around this whole thing around belief. And in my book, Dave, I want to thank you and your wife Miranda for just allowing us to walk alongside you for possibly what was the most challenging period that most people would face. And we tell the story of your wife Miranda, from 2010 when she was diagnosed with that rare form of breast cancer. Tell us a little bit about that journey and how that kind of felt for you and Miranda.
Yeah, I think there's a number of emotions. I mean, I think Miranda had something that didn't seem right for about 11 months before she was diagnosed, and to a certain extent, this is going to sound really odd, but there was a sense of relief in that at least we defined what the problem was. And I think that's true in any kind of situation. Sometimes, stuff's not working. You can't quite define it. That's actually more challenging than the first way of solving something is to define the problem.
Yeah.
Obviously, the definition of the problem in her particular case was not something that we would have particularly wanted or were hoping for. And because it had taken them 11 months to find it, it was pretty advanced, which obviously had more serious implications for her health at the time. And then I think when you're in that sort of dark situation, you've just got to hold on to the things that you can rely on. So in our case, that was friends. That was a bit about our faith. And I think it was also the sense of we need to just focus on the things that we could control. So yeah, it was a battle between in this case medical science and the cancer, and very fortunately for us, obviously on this occasion was one where medical science won, thank goodness.
Yeah, brilliant. And I think what I love about the story that you guys went through, obviously, firstly, is you guys have come through it, and that's amazing. But I love the way you've turned what has been a real challenge into something positive. And you guys are in the book because of the communication that you both know and felt, but put across in these amazing chocolate brownie balls. So in 2012 and 2014, you had these chocolate brownie balls, and you also had this blog and a book of a similar title around the last chocolate brownies. So why did you do that, and what's been the impact of that?
So sometimes things happen, don't they? Just by happy accident. So I'm not going to claim that any of this was we had foresight or planned it. But effectively, one of the things we did, there's a few things I can always remember vividly from that time, and one of them was the drive home from the hospital after she'd been diagnosed, and I was saying, okay, right, what's the one thing? I can say to Amanda, right, obviously I'll support you in every possible way I can, but if there's one thing, what's the one thing that you want me to do that's going to be most supportive? And she said, I don't want to go through chemo on my own. I want you to be there when I have my chemo. So absolutely fine. So that's really clear and that's really easy for me. So that's what we'll do.
Mm.
So the chemotherapy, again, for all sorts of reasons, was basically going to take about a day. So this entailed me with having a day off work, which was absolutely fine. And I went and sat with her and while she had the chemo. And I just remember thinking, I mean, there is literally nothing that you can do. And the facilities at the hospital at the time were pretty basic. And so I thought, what do I need to do? And we also have, because of the way that we've grown up and relocated, so we've got friends that are dotted all around the country. So actually we thought, we came up with this idea that I'll write a blog which will tell the story of what's going on and will help us to update our friends, because actually everybody was really concerned about her, which is great and obviously what you'd want. But I must admit, even at that time, I'd already realised actually this is going to get quite tiring telling this story 10, 15 times over on the phone to all of our friends who are all ringing up, and they all deserve to have, a proper response because they're concerned. But actually, do I want to tell this story 15 times over? And so the blog was a great way initially of us being able to get that information out there, update our friends. So then when they rang, you could have a more supportive conversation rather than having to update them on exactly where you're at. So and the blog was basically something to do whilst we were sat there for the day while she had chemo. So that's how it started. Miranda came up with the name. It's from the scene in the film Notting Hill where they're all sat around. There's one chocolate brownie left, and they tell their hard luck story to see who has the toughest story to win the last chocolate brownie. So we said, this is our moment when we're going to try and win the last chocolate brownie, and that's where that came from. And as sometimes can happen with the blog, and I think because it's a very personal story, and I think because it's a story that people could kind of relate to and hope that it doesn't happen to them, but it's a story. So this blog just took off. I mean, and we ended up with like 20,000 people that were following it, which almost took on a life of its own, really. And it turned out also to be a great way for me to get my feelings of just watching. It's like you're an observer in this horrible battle that you've got, real concerns about your wife about, and there's nothing that you can do. And as blokes, I think we feel like we need to do something. So that was quite challenging. So that helped me from that perspective. And so then off the back of it, we talked to Breakthrough Breast Cancer at the time, and they were saying, well, actually, we've got no real resource that's about men talking about what it's like to go through on this journey with their wife. So why don't we turn it into a book? So we turned it into a book, and then because we like parties and because we like to raise some funds, we just decided that actually, the support that Miranda had was phenomenal, and so actually, why don't we turn this into a bit of a fundraising? So the proceeds from the book and the proceeds from we ended up having 2 Last Chocolate Brownie ball events that raised some money. And so we set this goal of raising £20,000 was our target, because we knew roughly that's what the NHS cost had been for her to have her treatment. And so that's what we did, and we set that as a target, and that's how it came about. So it was kind of a follow-on to the writing of the blog, which was more done for our own benefit than anything else. But we were just able to turn that into a situation where we ended up with this fundraising for the hospital.
And probably the question on a lot of people's mind, then, you set yourself the target of 20,000 to go towards Breakthrough Breast Cancer, and to support. I think it was also to support the local hospital.
So actually, half went to Breakthrough Breast Cancer, as it was then. It's changed its name now, and half went to the Wolverstone Wish, which was actually Ipswich Hospital where Miranda was treated. It was their desire to build a proper chemotherapy unit and ward, because the building that it was in was pretty outdated and pretty run down. And fortunately, I mean, ours was a small part of it. They were looking to raise millions, but they just at the end of us raising the final bit, they got over the line, and they've now subsequently built this amazing chemotherapy unit.
So you hit your target of 20,000.
Yeah, we did in the end. Yeah, after the second last chocolate brownie ball was the one that got us over the line. Yeah, I think we ended up with about 22,000.
Fantastic. Yeah. So this sense, and I saw it in the ball, as you were speaking to people about this is why we're doing it, the sense right at the core, you felt, you've been through it, and so you feel the message that you're communicating, and therefore it comes through powerfully. But how do we do that? This is a very personal story for you as you're communicating it at a ball, but how do we do that in a work context? Because if we can get that sense of belief coming through powerfully, because we know it, we feel it, we sniff it, we smell it, we taste it, so our very essence, how do we do that in a work context?
So I think it's really important that you find something to be passionate about in your business. So, and you can do that in any business, so our vision within our organization has always been to make a difference to the quality of people's lives. And actually we think that through exercise or through day spas and relaxing, we can actually, in a small way, make a difference to the quality of someone's lives. We can, there's a number of reasons why people might join health clubs, but it's usually because they're not quite happy with how they are, or they want to kind of improve on the individual that they are. And I think, that's really important. And we sort of do quite a bit of training with our teams that make them realize that it's what's important is the impact that you have on people's lives. So that making a difference to people's lives is important. So I do this thing with them early on in their induction training, or our trainers do now, where we talk a little bit about asking them to name, so who was the world number one tennis player in 2010, who's earned the most amount of money as a golfer, who's the best-selling author, who was president of the United States in 1995, and we ask them these series of questions, and it's amazing how these people that have either gone on to have huge positions of power, great fame or fortune, they can't actually remember. No, we did Wimbledon in 2010. I can't. Was it Federer? Was it? And actually, people can't remember. Then we asked them another set of questions about who was it who taught you to swim, who took you for your first driving lesson, what's your favourite hobby? Who was the person you did that with initially? And they remember. So you can't remember who the president of the United States was, the most powerful person in the world, 5 or 6 years ago, but someone maybe 25 years ago who taught you how to swim or got you into your particular sport or hobby that you're doing. Their name comes like that. Yeah. And so it's those people that makes a difference to the quality of your life. So we do this thing about, you can have a real impact on these people by helping them to improve the quality of their life through exercise or through being able to relax and chill out in one of our spas. So I think the first thing is to create something that people can get passionate about. So back to when I was talking earlier about 10:30 at night, and you're cleaning out the showers on a Friday night, and you're in your early 20s, and you can think of 100 places you'd rather be at that particular moment in time, you kind of hopefully remind yourself that actually I'm here doing this because actually I'm going to make a difference to someone's life. So I think it's identifying in your business what it is that people can get passionate about. What is the story that as a business we're trying to tell, and then making sure that everybody realizes that they've got a key way in telling that story. Yeah, absolutely. And story is crucial. So I remember a period when, so the charity that Lisa and I run, we had a period a while ago where we needed to just gather people together and just remind people where we were going and work that out together. What's our next step as a charity? And I remember telling them stories. I remember, telling them the story of Danny, the young boy that had never been on holiday before. And this is why we do holidays for these young people. And I remember telling them the story of Tom, who came as a young boy and now is a leader. And that power of story then resonating with people to see that what drive behind it. So how does the power of story, how do you use that? Do you use it at all when you're communicating? Yeah, I mean, everybody loves a story. It's back to my example of of the blog. People love to read a story, and they love understanding and hearing about other people's lives. I mean, I love the fact that in Wikipedia, when people look up Wikipedia, there's the one section that's most looked at when you go onto Wikipedia is the little one that's headed personal life. So, it might be
Yes.
all the individuals about all the different things they've done, but the one that everyone clicks on in Wikipedia is personal life, to find out what's the real backstory to this person. What is it they do in their personal life? So everyone buys into story. And so what we have to really do is just make sure that we try to tell a story that people want to buy into. So to give you an example, how we use that at work is that we're recording this now, and we're in lockdown because of the coronavirus. So all of our sites are shut. Now, because we've operated in hotels, we opened our first site on the 1st of April 1987. Not a great day to start, the 1st of April, really. But we started on the 1st of April 1987. And because they're in hotels, our health clubs have to stay open over Christmas Day. So Christmas Day, Boxing Day, they're open, because if the hotel's open, then the health club needs to be open, the spa needs to be open. So we'd worked out that up until the 20th of March of this year, when 2020, when the government forced all our gyms to close, that we'd gone 12,043 days of every single day, one of our sites somewhere in the country open for business. And so telling the story is about, we're doing this whole series of training about recreate mosaic, and it's been a challenge. A lot of our staff have found it really hard. We've been in lockdown for over 3 months, and so what we want to do is we're telling the story that actually the difficulty of the situation that we're in. We don't know how many people are going to want to come back to join a health club, how many people are going to be concerned about catching, how many people are going to come back to a spa where there's close contact, and so there are all sorts of unknowns and concerns that are out there. But the power of the story is to say, look, this business, we were open for 12,043 consecutive days, and then we've had to shut. You're going to be part of starting the next 12,043 days. We're going to recreate Mosaic. This business for the first time has been shut down, it's been closed down, and we're going to have to come back in a slightly different format, because we're coming back into a slightly different world where people's views and their concerns are different to what they were when we were last open. So the power is that you've got the chance to create Mosaic in a new and different way. So it's trying to make them feel that they've got a chance to tell our story in a new way and be part of something that's recreating it.
I love that concept you've been talking about there. Is that sense of, I tell the story, but actually you become part of the story. So it's almost like, that film Never Ending Story, the reader becomes part of it, the listener becomes part of it. You're not just listening to this as a static story, you too become part of that next chapter. I think it's incredibly powerful. So delivering that message is quite key. And I heard a story recently about renaming the title CEO. Instead of it being CEO, it should be CRO, Chief Reminding Officer, and that our role as leaders is to be constantly reminding. And in the book, I talk about filling the bath by the dripping tap rather than a torrent. Because what we find, if we put a torrent of water in the bath and we put the plug in, over time, if we don't refill it, it's just going to either drain through a leak or just get a bit stagnant. But it's that constant drip, drip, drip. So how is it that you do that in reality as a leader?
Well, I think the first thing, Carl, I'd say is that I think that's a brilliant analogy and a brilliant story. And I think, our hands up, that's something we've not always done through the 33 years of been running the business. And I think it's mistakes, part of the mistakes that we've made. We assume that because we're focused on it and we've told this story so many times that everybody gets it.
I've told you this one anymore,
exactly. And the problem is that actually, a few people change, and although actually our staff retention is pretty good for the industry, we still, it's a young person's business, as I've already said, and therefore you're going to get a turnover of staff. So we've been guilty in the past, and I think the idea of the chief reminding officer, I like, because actually that just makes a huge amount of sense. You can't tell people your mission and vision and values too much, and you do need to kind of keep reminding them what they are. So for example, one of our core values is that we always promote people from within. And I became conscious, I don't know, probably 8 or 9 years ago, that we lose some of the way that we're living out our values. We're living them out, but we're not reminding people that we're living them out. And so I do this thing which goes out with people's payslip called Dave's Dispatch. and it's just basically telling them some internal stories, and I've changed what was basically kind of just telling stories of what was going on in our clubs as sort of like, we've won this contract, or this is happening. So those sort of stories, I've tried to change it into a thought piece from me that reinforces one of our core values. And then I've also got bits in there. So one of our core values is that we always promote people from within. So wherever possible, if we've got a vacancy in a more senior position, we'll try and appoint somebody from within. And we've got a really good record of doing that, which I'm really proud of. We just didn't tell anybody that. So one of the things that we do now, I have this little section in there called Moving On Up. And every month for the last 8 or 9 years, I've always been able to put a picture in of this particular staff at one of our site who last month got promoted. So it's a way of, if we say we promote from within, how do we demonstrate that? Well, we can demonstrate that because every month on your wage slip, open it up and you'll see at least one person who's been promoted into that new position. So so I think it's that I never get bored of every month reminding people, to use your chief reminding officer, that we've promoted someone from within.
So how do we engage the listeners is a key thing. In the book, I confess to formally now having a caravan and towing a caravan. And one of the things that I had to learn fairly early on is like when you get in your car onto the tow bar, and the easiest thing I found to do was lift the boot so you could actually look back through and line up your tow bar to the caravan. So before those watching this video worry to think this has now become the caravanning show, there is a reason for my analogy here. This sense of being able to line it up with the listener, and knowing where is the listener and lining it up. So, and finding those points of connection for delivering the message. So how do you do that? Is it just about relationships so that you know them better, or is there something a little more than that? How do you line up your communication so it lands? So
I think, we've got a bit of a saying when it comes down to recruitment. I think it's about finding the people that buy into what it is you're trying to do. So we have a saying sort of around our recruitment that it's about getting the right people on the bus and the wrong people off the bus. So we talk about buses, not caravans.
Yeah. I think it was Jim Colin stuff originally, wasn't it? About getting your right people on in the first place. Great. So as we draw the video to a close, it's really, what are your top tips for communicating powerfully, Dave? If you were going to share some of your wisdom, what you've learned both through your personal life, in terms of the journey that you and Miranda took, what you've learned from work, what is it that helps you to communicate powerfully, the key things?
I think first and foremost, it is about telling it through story. So people love stories. So if you can tell or communicate the message you want to get across in the form of a story, it will be far more powerful than simply saying, that this is what we do because we do it. If you can put that into a story around why we do what we do, I think that's important. I think secondly, and this is really tough as a leader. As a leader, I think there are often expectations that because you're the leader, you can't afford to get it wrong. And I think that's a unrealistic expectation, and I don't believe it. So if genuinely I don't think that I make mistakes, I'd be a nightmare to work for, wouldn't it? Can you imagine working for someone that just thinks they never make a mistake? So I think another powerful tool as a leader is to be honest about your mistakes. To say, do you know what? I got this one wrong, guys. Actually, I made this judgment call and I got it wrong. And I think people earn more respect. And of course, what you do is that you give people permission to then admit their own mistakes. Because one of the biggest challenges as a leader is not just about, because communication is two-way, right? So communication, it's important the way you communicate out to your team. It's important the way they communicate back to you. I don't want people telling me what they think I want to hear. I want people being real with me. And I want people telling me where things are going wrong. And I want to create an environment where people feel they can say, look, this isn't working, or actually, do you know what? I've completely stuffed up here. And if I'm not prepared to admit my mistakes, then how on earth would they? Why should I expect them to feel comfortable about telling me where it's gone wrong? But I actually need to know that if we're going to grow as an organisation, if we're going to strive to be excellent, if we're going to improve. So, of course, we get things wrong, and of course, I make loads of mistakes. So I think it's about being honest and flagging those up, so that it creates the communication environment where people can feel they can communicate with me with honesty and integrity in the same way as I do that with them. So I think telling a story and amplify what you do with a story, being honest and real about kind of communicating when you've got it wrong as well as when you've got it right, and taking responsibility for things even when it's not your fault. Is like, ultimately you've got to own the situation. Coronavirus would be a topical example. It's not my fault that we've got coronavirus, but there will be some implications of that. We will not be able to probably keep all of our staff on board as a result of this. Some are going to have to leave that we wouldn't want to leave, and that's just because we can't afford that. And so it's how we communicate that with integrity, honesty, and owning that that's something we have to do in order to survive. But the individuals that have gone, this is not anything that's your fault. This is an outcome that's based on something that was out of our control. So I think, tell a story, communicate with integrity, and admit where you've got it wrong as well, and take ownership of everything that's going on. Those would be my three things.
Great, thank you, Dave. I mean, and what sits at the heart of all that is this brings us right back to the beginning again, that importance of honesty, authenticity, and so that what we say is not in dissonance with what we're talking about.
Exactly.
So thank you for sharing your story, both in terms of your personal and your work life, and for us to see and kind of peer in and see the authenticity that sits behind that as well. So thank you, Dave, for joining us. Yeah, thank you, and we look forward to hearing the next stage of how many days as you restart for Mosaic, as they continue writing that next stage of the story with you.
And let's hope it's soon.
Yeah, great. Thanks very much, Dave.
Thank you.